I just have to close my window.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
that's okay. Hi,
That's
everyone.
better.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here with us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Margot Parmenter, and I'm the events coordinator at the Hub City Bookshop in Spartanburg, South Carolina, in the States. We're so excited to have you join us tonight to learn how to make your cat happy with author and psychologist Zazie Todd. Zazie is going to tell us about her book, give us the science on taking care of our cats, and also answer all of your questions. But before I hand it over to her, I'd like to introduce our bookshop. The Hub City Bookshop is a full-service independent bookstore that serves the literary community of upstate South Carolina. We're part of the larger organization, the Hub City Writers Project, which is a nonprofit whose mission is to cultivate readers and nurture writers. We do that by publishing original titles through our press, as well as by sponsoring literary programming in our community, including workshops, book clubs, and author events like this. If you want to find out anything more about us, our mission, our programming, our future events, please head to our website at hubcity.org and sign up for our newsletter. Also, if you have not yet purchased your copy of Her, please note that you can click the button at the bottom of your screen that says buy the book and get a brand new beautiful copy from us at Hub City. Buying the book through our shop is the best way to support the Writers Project and your local bookstore. Just one last thing before I hand it over to Zazie. Please feel free to ask questions. We've reserved a lot of time specifically so that she can answer your queries about the feline friends in your lives. And please go ahead and drop those questions in the chat so that everyone can see them. And if you want to tell us your name and where you're from, that would be fun too. Without further ado, I'll introduce Zazie. Zazie Todd loves nothing more than helping people with their pets. She is the creator of Companion Animal Psychology, an award-winning blog that shares the latest science about our animal companions and evidence-based ways to care for them. Todd has a PhD in psychology and an advanced certificate in feline behavior from International Cat Care. Her award-winning book about dog behavior, WAG, was featured in the New York Times, Slate, and People magazine. Todd lives in Maple Ridge, British Columbia, with her husband, dog, and 2 cats. Zazie, thank you so much for being here. I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to chat with you. I'm thrilled to be back, and thank you to everybody who has come to join us today. I'm really pleased to see you here. Hello to Marilyn, Ingrid, and Jan who've typed comments in the chat. Please feel free to add your questions in the chat because I've left lots of time for questions, and usually people have lots of questions for me. So I want to make sure that I get to all of your burning questions about cats in general, or your specific cat, or a cat that you love. And so I'm going to actually start with a reading from Purr. I'm going to say a little bit about why I wrote the book, and then I'm going to do another short reading, and then after that we'll be going to your questions, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what questions you've got for me, so you can type those in the chat at any time. But I'm going to begin with a section from the beginning of the book. Let me just take my glasses off so that I can read. Melina is busy trying to distract me from writing this book. She has already walked in front of the computer screen 2 times, and just now she's come to sit next to my keyboard, looking hopeful. Of course, I can't resist. I reach out a hand and she sniffs it, then rubs the side of her head on it. Next, she raises her head slightly to make it easier for me to pet her under the chin, just how she likes it. Her purr is soft and melodic. Then, satisfied, she leaps up to the window ledge behind my monitor to watch the world outside for a while, the tip of her tail twitching ever so slightly. Anyone who thinks that pet cats don't care about their people isn't paying enough attention. This is a problem for cats. People think they are easy pets, so don't provide what they need. We have so many stereotypes about cats as loners and jerks and just difficult animals that it's as if no one sees the actual cat in front of them. A beautiful fluffy bundle who wants and craves your attention, albeit on their own terms, who delights in chasing the one toy, and who loves to snooze in the sunny spots of your home, but who also likes somewhere small and cozy to curl up in to relax and be safe. When you see cats for who they are and give them what they need, they'll be happier, they'll be less likely to have behavior problems, and your efforts will be repaid with feline affection. For most cats, happiness isn't being squished and petted for half an hour and then ignored for the rest of the day. Cats have their little quirks, and that's what we love about them. But at the same time, every cat has a set of needs that we should meet, and I'm sure they care about us. Take the way Melina just jumped back to my desk and sniffed noses with me, a feline greeting, before rubbing her head on my forehead, soft warm fur, and no doubt some pheromones that I can't detect, left behind in a streak against my skin. This head rubbing, or bunting as it is technically called, is an important behaviour between cats who are part of the same social group. Now Melina has leapt up to the top of the bookshelves where she can survey the room, but is still close by and can watch my work. If I look up at her, there, I get a slow blink, which of course I return. Meanwhile, my other cat Harley, a hefty tabby, is under my desk near my feet. No doubt this has something to do with the fact that the heat is on and the heat vent under my desk is blowing out nice warm air, but still, he has the whole house with a heat vent in every room to choose from. Indeed, he's already spent part of the morning, as he usually does, completely blocking the heat vent in the hall so that he is nice and warm, but no hot air escapes around him into the house. And now he's picked the vent near me. In his own way, he is choosing to be close to me. And probably soon, like most days, he'll jump on my lap and demand lots of petting, then climb on my desk, trample my keyboard, and get picked up and removed to my old office chair, which I've had to keep because he likes to relax in it so much. The domestic cat is descended from Felis libica, a desert cat that is still found in parts of Africa. Occasionally, bones of cats have been found in Bronze Age and Iron Age settlements, and the presence of skinned cat bones in an archaeological site at Coppergate, York, shows that in Anglo-Saxon England, at least some cats were used for their fur. A 9th century poem, Pangaban, shows that sometimes cats had names, which speaks of cats as companions. But the oldest known case of a domestic cat living alongside humans dates from the Middle Ages in Kazakhstan, along the Silk Route by which people and goods moved from East Asia to Persia, East Africa, and Southern Europe. Up until very recently indeed, domestic cats were prized for their abilities to catch rodents. Now they're increasingly seen as part of the family and often live indoors, no mice in sight. Everyone who loves cats knows that every cat has their own individual personality and preferences. When we think of pet cats in their homes, we think of much-loved pets who get to snooze all day long. But what if many of those cats are actually bored out of their mind and stressed by their home life? And that's really why I wrote Purr, The Science of Making Your Cat Happy, because some research a while back found that the number one issue affecting pet cats is actually thought to be behavior issues due to a poor home environment. And I think everybody who has a cat absolutely loves their cat, but there are so many things we can do for cats to help to make them feel more comfortable in their home and to give them things to do. And when we do those things, it's so much better for them. So I'm going to say a little bit about why I wrote the book, and then I'll move on to another reading. And please keep putting your questions in the chat, and I'm really looking forward to answering those. So Purr is the sister book to Wag, The Science of Making Your Dog Happy, which was my first book. And in fact, both books take a similar kind of approach in that they start with, in this case, getting a kitten or cat, in terms of Wag getting a dog or adult puppy, puppy or adult dog. And take you all the way through. So Purr takes you all the way through a cat's life in terms of taking them to the vet, setting your house up for them, how cats interact with children and things like that, all the way through to those difficult moments at the end of a cat's life. And that is a chapter that you can read if you want to, and if you're in the right space to read it. But it is also a chapter that you can skip if you're not in a good place to read it, because I know that's a difficult topic. So I've written it so you can skip it if you need to. But it has lots of useful information that people don't often think about. And at the end of every chapter, I've got a set of tips for a happy cat, tips to apply the science at home, And at the very end of the book, there's a checklist for a happy cat, which will be full of things, some of which you'll be doing already for your cat. And so that will help you know that you should keep doing them, and you can give yourself a pat on the back for it. And some of them will be things that you're not yet doing, and you can think about whether or not it's a good idea for you to try them, and you can pick something from that list and give it a try and see what you think. And it includes things like making sure that your cat has safe spaces, because cats are not just predators, they also are prey animals. And so cats like to have a space where they can run and hide and feel safe, especially because their natural response to a stressful event is going to be to run away from it, to run and hide somewhere, rather than actually to face the threat. So that's something that's really easy to do. A lot of people do it with the cat condo. You can also easily supply a cardboard box, for example. We know that cats love cardboard boxes, so that's another great way to provide a safe space for them. And something else that I talk about in Purr is about training your cat, because although a lot of people think that cats can't be trained, of course you can train a cat just like you can train a dog, and you can train them using something they like as positive reinforcement. So you can use little tiny bits of food, chicken, tuna, or you can use those tubes of wet cat treats. You can let the cat lick from that. That's a really popular thing with many cats. It just needs to be really tiny because cats are small. And you can also typically only work in short sessions because cats aren't used to being trained. But there's a plan for teaching your cat to go in a cat carrier in the book. And there's also a plan for teaching your cat a trick to do a nice sit pretty with the paws up, which I've taught my cat Melina to do. And that's just a fun thing. But when you think of something like teaching your cat to go in their carrier, actually, we know from the research that when people do this, the cat is less stressed actually on the way to the vet. They're less stressed in the vet's appointment, and it's much easier for the vet to actually be able to complete the vet exam. So it's not just that it's easier for you at home to get the cat in the carrier, it's also easier once you actually get to the vet. So that's a really helpful thing that people can do. And obviously it's easier to do with a kitten, but you can train any cat, even a cat who is already terrified of their cat carrier, and it's just going to take longer for them to learn it, because you have to work at their pace. And we tend to want to work quite quickly, but unfortunately you just have to work at the pace that your feline is happy with, and that can actually be quite slow. And other things that we can talk about later, depending on what kinds of questions you have. We can talk about choosing the right toys for your cat. We can talk about feeding them, providing opportunities for play. We can talk about the sense of smell. I do like to talk about cats and smells, so maybe we'll come back to that later. And I'm going to do another short reading, and then I'm going to turn over to your questions. So one of the things that has really changed about cats is that they've gone from being creatures who we use for catching mice to actually become members of our home. And so we now are responsible for feeding them. And one of the things we know is that if a cat has to feed themselves, they're actually going to spend a large part of the day hunting, and they're maybe going to catch 12 to 14 mice in a day. And a mouse is a small meal. It's only suitable for one cat, so cats don't share their meals. And so this kind of changes what we think about the best ways to feed cats. So one of the chapters in the book is about feeding your cat. And this bit is starting about Harley. Harley is my tabby cat. When Harley first came to live with us, he was very particular about his food, especially how much he was fed. If there was even a tiny bit of the bottom of his bowl showing, he would become very distressed, howling and howling and howling. He clearly felt insecure about food, and so I would move the bits of kibble so the bottom of the bowl was no longer visible, topping it up if necessary to keep him happy. We had been told that he was left behind when someone moved house, and taken to the animal shelter some days later by a kind neighbour who heard his howls. So he may have gone without food for a little while, or perhaps he just had insecurities for another reason. It took about a year before he stopped howling at the slightest glimpse of the bottom of his bowl and seemed to finally trust that I would feed him. These days, Harley and Melina know their routine for being fed, different food toys at different times of day. I put the food toys in separate locations so they can eat without having to compete with each other. Melina always appears when it's time for food, but does not ask for it at other times, whereas Harley, I expect you've already guessed, Harley will start to meow as his mealtime gets close. At first, Harley did not like food that was different from his usual fare. If we offered little pieces of cooked chicken or tuna, Melina would gobble them up, whereas Harley would sniff them and look at them as if to say, "What's this?" He didn't seem to know what to do with these treats. He would watch Melina eating hers, and then she would rush in to grab his before we knew what was happening. She's fast, is Melina. I started pulling bits of chicken into tiny, tiny pieces and standing guard over Harley while he investigated whether he wanted to eat them or not. Now, some years later, he will eat some additional foods so long as the pieces are tiny, but he still prefers regular kibble or chicken pate cat food. Thank you very much. Melina, however, will eat almost anything, although the other day she did turn her nose up at a particularly stinky and very tiny piece of camembert cheese. If she smells chicken or tuna, she comes running from the other end of the house, meowing plaintively. The way we're supposed to feed cats has changed to reflect our increased knowledge about normal feline behavior and what is best for cats. As well, there's been an increase in overweight and obesity in pet cats, which has implications for feline health, and getting things right with food can help to reduce stress for cats. So one of the things that I talk about in the book is the idea of feeding multiple small meals a day. And if you're thinking about 12 mice a day, obviously it's not convenient for us to feed our cat 12 times a day, but we can think about feeding them 5 times a day, perhaps. And if we're going to be out, we can use a timed feeder to maybe deliver some of those meals. So that's one of the things that we can do. And also, of course, then there are food puzzle toys and so on. So there's a lot that you can do. And I give these examples with my own cats, and those are the bits that I've read about now. But I also explain what you should be doing to help your cat be happy and the science behind it so that you know exactly why I'm making those recommendations and you can understand why this is important for cats. So I can see there are a couple of questions in the chat. I also see a question as to whether you'd be comfortable coming on screen to ask your questions live. So Marilyn, I guess that is a question for you.
It's okay if you aren't, but I just thought people might want to pop up, pose their question to Zazie, and then, of course, you won't have to stay on screen. You know, I'll pop you away again. But if not, that's okay. That's okay, too. We can start with the questions we have and maybe go from there. Okay. I'll invite you, Marilyn, and then if you feel comfortable, you just say yes to my invitation. So I think Marilyn started off our conversation in the chat with a question about having 2 kitties and that she talks to them. How can she use that trust to help them stay out of trouble? Which is
there
a great.
I am. Hello.
There you are.
Hello.
All right, you ask your question, and I'm going to toggle my mic off.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. All right, I have 2 kitties. They are they are brother and sister. I have had them since they were 3 months old, and they will be turning 3 in July. And I have a very close relationship with them. I talk to them all the time. And I've begun to notice that there are sometimes when they're about to get into trouble that I say something to them and they seem to understand that, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. Although my little boy cat, Roy, he doesn't really care because he likes to get into trouble. So do you have any advice for trying to keep them out of mischief?
Well, first of all, it's really lovely that you talk to your cats and that you have such a great relationship with them. And I do have a little section on cats, talking to cats and understanding cats in the book. But even more recently, since I finished the book, there was a study that showed that cats even recognize each other's names. So they really are paying a lot of attention to what we're saying. And the scientist who did that research, she said to me that actually we should be talking to our cats more. Because, you know, a lot of people will meow at their cats, and I meow at my cats, and my cat meows back. But I also talk to them, and she said we should be talking to our cats more, because actually they're understanding a lot more than we think. Even if they're not speaking English, obviously, but they are actually understanding a lot. So that's wonderful. And maybe what you've got going on when they're about to do something is simply that you're distracting them by saying something nice to them. And so they're coming and they're turning their attention to you instead of to whatever it is. Now, I don't know what kind of mischief they tend to get up to. But one of the things to think about is that when we're providing the things that our cats need, then they're less likely to get up to things that we would rather they didn't do. So that might be things like really good scratching posts.
Yes.
Because cats have to scratch. It's a natural behavior for cats. And also when they scratch, they're depositing pheromones from the pads in their paws. So once they scratch somewhere, that pheromone is a chemical signal that will attract them to scratch back there again. So we need really tall scratching posts that will let them get a really good stretch.
Okay.
And we can use positive reinforcement for use when they have used the post. You can just give them a treat for using the right post. So that's one thing, for example. Other kinds of things, cats like to be high up. So sometimes people don't like their kitties getting on the kitchen counter. And it helps to just understand, again, this is a natural thing for cats to want to do because they like to be high up and they like to perch. And if it's possible to give them somewhere else to be high up and perch in the kitchen, that's one solution to that, one potential solution. And another reason a lot of cats get into mischief is because they like to play and they're very playful. And you said your cats are quite young, so I bet they're very playful, and I bet it's lovely to watch them play.
Yeah.
And one of the things we know is that the more time you spend playing with your cat, for example, playing with the one toy, the less likely they are to have behavior issues. So that's really good for them. So I don't know if that helps to answer your question, but
one thing I have been trying to do is to convince my husband that they need one of those kind of tall, kind of cat house structures, so to speak. And he thinks I'm crazy. And I say it's because they have that need to be up high and watch things. And that also gives them a taller scratching area, because I know Roy is actually a very tall and long cat, where Rhonda is a shorter, more stout cat. But
yeah, so cats like to get a good stretch when they're scratching, and unfortunately many of the posts that are available on the market are just too short. And so it's a really good idea to be able to give them a tall thing to scratch, a tall scratching post, but also like a tall cat tree or cat condo, or somewhere high up where they can be, just because cats like to be high up. And it could be the top of some bookshelves, for example. Melina loves the top of my bookshelves. I don't know what the bookstore cat thinks of the bookshelves, because I know you have a bookstore cat at Hub City, but the top of bookshelves is a lovely place for cats to be because they can see. So a nice tall cat condo is exactly the kind of thing that your cats would like, definitely.
Very good. Well, thank you so very much. I really enjoy your blog, and I follow you on Facebook and Twitter. So very happy. I have the book. I have the book.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much. That's perfect.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm going to send you off the screen. Nice to have you. We have a question in the box from Jan or Jan, maybe. The question is, my cat likes to tear up paper, bills in particular. Is this a normal, happy behavior or a sign of stress or boredom? I'm going to invite this person on the screen. Feel free to decline if you aren't in a situation to be on screen. And otherwise, I'll just let Zazie answer the question. Is it normal to tear up paper?
Yes, it is. So cats would naturally hunt And when we play with cats, they're using their predatory sequence. And if you think about the predatory sequence,
there she is.
thank you for joining us. It's a really great question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you hear?
I can, yes. Yeah. So cats, if you think about the predatory sequence, at the end of that sequence, they're going to start destroying their prey. I know it's a bit gross to think about. So one of the reasons why we think cats like to shred paper or to shred cardboard is because, like, when they catch a bird and they start killing it, there's going to be feathers flying everywhere. And so scratching at the paper and tearing it to shreds kind of is a bit like that. But the other thing to know is that we're talking about just now about cats liking somewhere to scratch. Some cats like to have a horizontal surface to scratch as much as a vertical surface. So just giving them like the bottom of a cardboard box and letting them scratch at it with their claws and tear it up is actually really good for them. So is that the kind of thing that your cat does?
No, she scratches on. She's got scratching posts. She started scratching on the furniture after I tried to introduce a stray cat who scratched on the furniture. So now she won't do it when I get new furniture. With the paper, she tears it up with her mouth. So
yeah, so that's more like that hunting thing. Like it's very satisfying for the cat at the end of that hunting phase to actually start tearing the prey apart. So what she's doing with the paper is just very similar to that, and it's completely normal. So it's not anything to worry about. There are some cats who eat objects that they shouldn't eat, unfortunately, and that would be more of an issue. Like she was actually consuming lots of things that she shouldn't consume. That would be something initially to see a vet about. But no, just tearing up the paper with her mouth, that's just a fun, playful activity for her and something that she enjoys, and it's very normal.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether to get a second cat, but I don't know whether she's bored and unhappy and lonely or not. I had her, she was a stray. I found her in my driveway with 4 kittens that were past their critical period, and I managed to tame one, and I kept her and her kitten, and then her kitten died when she was 5 from lymphoma. And she was very distressed for a while, but she's never let me introduce another cat when I had the kitten. And recently she brought in a baby possum, so I've stopped letting her outside. So now I'm very concerned about her boredom and how much she's willing to play with me, having been a stray, and whether she's lonely. She has become much more affectionate since she's hasn't had the kitten, her other cat. So bit of a dilemma there, but she seems quite happy.
Yeah, so the thing about cats is a lot of cats actually prefer to be the only cat in the home. Some cats are very happy with another cat, and it's hard to know. But given that she seems to have not particularly liked the stray that you found, that maybe is a sign that perhaps she would prefer to be the only cat in the home. And a lot of it depends on what happened to her in her socialization period. So that's a time between 2 and 7 weeks of a kitten's life, and lots of positive experiences with other cats then would make a kitten more likely to grow up to like other cats around. And usually they like the other cats from their litter, so their kittens. If you adopt 2 kittens together, usually they'll continue to get on well. But if you have a cat who didn't have those positive early experiences with other cats, most likely they'd like to be the only cat. And I think this is something that a lot of people worry about, and it's hard to know when you've just got the adult cat and you don't know everything about their past. But very often they will prefer to just be the only cat. And the thing about having them indoors is making sure they've got safe spaces, hiding places, high up spaces, and making time to play with them and make sure they do have enrichment, like paper to shred. Obviously, that's one of the fun things she likes to do, or play with the one toy and things like that, or still bringing in some scents from outside, perhaps, so that she can still get the smell from outside. That's another thing that you can do as enrichment.
And I will build a cat enclosure outside when I get a chance to.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, I think we all dream of having a lovely catio like that. Yeah, great questions. Thank you very much. And thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much. I'm going to, bye. The next question comes from Kim. I'll invite Kim on screen. Please, of course, feel free to decline if you'd like. Kim's question in the chat was, how can we make our kitties more active and less depressed? That's just a great overall question.
It really is, because if your cat is not doing very much, it does speak to the fact that they might be a bit depressed. Unless, I have to add the caveat, if they're really not doing much and this is a change from their normal behavior, then they should go to the vet, because any sudden change in behavior should always mean that you get them checked at the vet just to be sure that they're okay in case there's a medical issue affecting it. But so making your cat more active, some of it is making the home suitable for them. If you live somewhere where it's safe for them to have outdoors access for part of the day, then obviously that's one way to make them more active. Obviously, leash walks. Hello.
Hi. I'm sorry. My bed's a mess because my kitty didn't want to leave.
That's fine, no problem. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, so having things for your cat to do, and again, we're talking about high up spaces and safe spaces for them. Having nice toys for them to play with is a really good one, and that would be toys that they can play with on their own, as well as toys they can play with you. So toys on their own, cats get bored of toys very easily. So it's a good idea to rotate the toys. You don't have to keep on buying new toys. You can just rotate the toys. So put them away for a bit, or some of them away for a bit, and then bring them out again 2 or 3 weeks later. And the cat will be thinking, hey, this is new. It's as if it's new again.
Like I put the toy. I'm sorry, I'm echoing.
Yes.
But if I put the toy away and then try a new one, so she has a variety.
Yes. So if suppose your cat has a lot of toys, pick some of them, put them away for a couple of weeks, just keep half of them out, and then a couple of weeks later swap them over, bring some new toys out. And even though they're toys that they already had, your cat is going to be like, oh, I haven't seen this for a while. This is fun and interesting. So they'll get engaged in it again. And then think also about the kinds of toys that they have, because I think a toy mouse is ubiquitous. But when a cat is playing with a toy, it's as if the toy is like a prey item. So think of toys that represent different prey items, like something big like a rabbit that they can kick out with the back legs. Maybe something a bit like a snake, long and thin. I mean, obviously it's not an actual snake, but just something long and thin. Maybe, yeah, and maybe something with feathers, so it kind of represents a bird. So they have different types of toys to play with, and some cats are kind of specialists and they really prefer like the toy mice and not so much. But a lot of cats will play with a wide range of different toys, and that's another way to make it more interesting for them. And then if you have a one toy, and you can play with the one toy, you can use that to get them to move around the house, to chase it around the house. So you have the one toy, or fishing rod toy, some people call it, and move it as if it's a prey animal and try and get your cat engaged. And remember, some of the time the cat will just be watching and then stalking. They won't be leaping in the air the whole time. So don't be disheartened if they're spending some of their time just watching. But use that, and you can use that to get them to move around the house, and that will help to get them a bit more activity as well.
Well, thank you so much. Some of the toys that I bought are like robotic toys that I buy from pets. She's afraid of those. It's so funny.
Yeah, so also some of the toys that actually move on their own, for a bold cat, they're okay, but for a more shy cat, they're a bit much, or they take a little while to get used to them. So, you know, they can be lots of fun, but it depends on how confident the cat is, really.
Well, thank you so much for your advice.
Thank you for the great question.
I think I'll spare everybody my echo and sign off.
Thank you for being here. The next question we have is from Ingrid, and it's kind of relating to what we're talking about. I'll just read the question out. It's nice to have science in the hands of the public with your book. Any suggestions on how we get pet manufacturers on board, such as making or stocking taller scratching posts? I measured, Ingrid's saying, I measured the ones in my local stores, and most were not tall enough.
Yeah, thank you, Ingrid. That's a great question. And unfortunately, that would be true of my local stores as well. Most of them aren't tall enough. And I think some of it is getting information out to people, because if people are going into the stores and saying, no, this isn't good enough, I need a taller one, then people might start thinking of them. And I think also we can support the businesses that, hello, we can support the businesses that do provide more appropriate things and that do make the bigger scratching posts, for example, because some of them are smaller businesses actually that do that. So that can be one way to support it as well. And I don't know to what extent toy manufacturers have people on board who understand. I mean, I think some companies do have people on board who they use as consultants to help them in designing these things. And I think some of them don't, and they keep churning out what they've always churned out. So some of it is increasing education, which luckily we're getting more of. But yeah, I think it's a difficult thing. And it makes me sad when I see all these really short posts that are just like maybe big enough for a kitten, but not for an adult cat at all. Or the ones that you hang on the back of a door, and it probably sounds like a good idea from the person's perspective because it's easy to put up there. But from the cat's perspective, it's not sturdy and the door's going to move about and the cat's probably not going to want to use it. So I think it's a difficult one, and hopefully just more education will help to get people buying the right kind of thing.
So I have a quick question. Can we take one question, one more? Okay.
Sure.
So I was just thinking, and I don't know, Zazie, maybe you can help the thought process. So, when dogs do like lure coursing and they have that little fake rabbit running along a wire or something, would that be indoor enrichment for cats? Like if you could set something up like that, like to go around your house, and then end it like with some food. So it's like they caught the prey and you feed them.
I think that's a lovely idea. And I think that's an empirical question. I haven't seen anybody do that, but you can imagine that it might work. But if you think about how prey animals move, like if you think about how a mice moves, it's probably going to move a bit and stop and move a bit and stop. So you'd have to try and get it not just to go whoosh, but to kind of change how it moves a bit. And I think when someone's playing with the one toy with the cat, that's something that you can become quite tuned into when the cat is paying attention to it when it's still, and then you just move it a little bit. So yeah, I think there could be, you can get a kind of thing that's like a cloth and there's a mouse thing underneath it that goes round and round, and it's battery operated, and you've got, I think it has 3 adjustable speeds, and my cats absolutely loved it for a bit, and then they just got really bored of it because it just goes the same speed all the time. And they were like, this is enough. Okay. But yeah, it's a lovely idea. And if you start thinking about designing a home for a cat, and you can put something like that in, and lots of shelves all over to give them high up spaces, nice catios, I mean, you could really build some wonderful homes, I think, from the cat's perspective.
Yeah, I was just wondering because, like, when we have model trains out, the cat is kind of like, oh, when it's going around and then it stops, or so. Just wondering. Thanks.
Yeah, so you could try it if you could get like a train that it wouldn't matter if the cat bashed it off and damaged it accidentally in some way, and you could maybe attach a feather to the end of it or something like that and see what happens. Just try it and see, so long as the cat's not going to come to any harm and you're not going to break something, then you can try it and see, find out. And I would love to know. Do let me know if you try it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Do that experiment and report back.
Yeah, please do.
Wonderful. The next question comes from Christina. I'll invite Christina onto the screen. I'm going to glom on to her question while we're waiting for her to appear on the screen. She's asking about her cat. It does go in the yard. And for the first little while, he was keeping to the backyard, and now he's trying to go further afield. So I'll let Christina ask her question for you.
Hi. Well, that's basically the story. I mean, I have 2 cats and a dog, and we're spending the summer with my parents. And they have 4 cats. So my boy cat has not been happy. So I've been letting him outside. And yeah, for the first week, it's been 2 weeks now. So he's been, staying to the yard on the ground. But lately we've been finding him on the fence and like walking along the fence. And I'm like, oh no, he's gonna, go outside of the yard and get hit by a car or whatever. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about the whole thing. And I mean, why, like what I can do to make him happier, because he's obviously restless and irritated and stressed out being in the house with all the other animals.
Yeah. So I mean, there's two parts to that. One is what you can do about him in the yard, and the other is what you can do about the house to make him more comfortable in the house. And unfortunately, it's not really possible to train a cat to stay in a yard. So if he can get out, if he's the kind of bold, adventurous cat who might want to go exploring, then he is quite likely to do that. And if it was your yard and you wanted to guarantee that you could keep him in, some of the things you can do is you can try coyote rollers on the top of a fence, which just kind of rolls so that they can't get a good purchase on the top of the fence. And that often will keep a cat in. Or also you can get fencing. You get fencing that kind of comes in. So the fence goes up and the fence comes back in so that the cat can't get on the top of the fence and they can't leap over the fence either. And then you just have to be careful that it's arranged so that there isn't a tree that will give the cat access to get out instead, because otherwise the cat might climb the tree and jump off the tree. So those will be ways of preventing the cat from leaving the yard. And they seem to work quite well. The coyote rollers really are designed to keep coyotes out rather than cats in. But they seem to do reasonably well at keeping cats in too, whereas the fencing is designed more specifically to keep a cat in the yard. And it's maybe not so pretty to look at, but it can be very effective so long as you've designed it right. And there's a company in the UK that makes it called Protect a Pet, I think. But there must be someone in North America who does something similar too, or a local handyman could do something similar. Otherwise, you might find that leash walks in the yard might be a better way of doing it. So you can train your cat to walk on a leash, first to wear a harness and then to walk on a leash. And then that means that then they can't escape. And then you could even take them out into the neighborhood if the neighborhood seems safe for them and if they seem to enjoy it. But if you do that, it's always a good idea to take an escape route with you. So take something like a soft carrier that if there's something that spooks your cat, they can just jump in the carrier and you can do it up and bring them home in the carrier. Because like if you meet an off-leash dog or something like that, obviously that can be quite terrifying for a cat. So, I mean, that's a fairly long answer, but the short answer is, unfortunately, it is quite difficult to keep a cat in the yard unless it's completely enclosed. Obviously, you could completely enclose it with fencing. That would be another option. But the other thing is in the house, because of the other cats in the house, I don't know how you've got things set up for now, but cats don't like to share their resources. So they like to have access to their own things away from everybody else's. So that means their litter box and their food and their water and their bed and everything should be somewhere where the other cats won't have the same access. So it could just mean having enough of those things spread about the house. Like the typical rule of thumb for litter boxes would be 1 per cat plus 1 spare. So 5 cats in the home, that would mean 6 litter boxes, ideally. And not all in the same room, because if they're all in the same room, from the cat's perspective, it's as if they're just one, because one other cat can still block them from getting access. So spread things out as much as you can and make sure they're in quiet locations so that your cat can go and get their food and get their water and have some playtime with you and do their business in the litter box without having to come across the other cats as much as possible. And maybe even if you've got a room like perhaps your bedroom that the other cats aren't allowed into, or you try and keep the other cats out of, that might help them feel more comfortable as well, because some cats aren't very keen on other cats, and to do a proper introduction between cats can actually take a very long time. So the most important thing is to make sure those resources are separate as much as possible. So I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you so much. This was very, very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
We have another question from Kim, and we definitely have time to answer it. But Kim, I hope you will forgive me. I'm not going to invite you back on screen just because of the echoing, because it'll be okay. Perfect. Zazie will be able to get more information on. Though it was lovely to have you on earlier. So, the question is about Tuxedo. Kim's 9-year-old cat who's lived alone with her since she was a kitten. What's your take on bringing another cat in or not?
Yeah, so the question to ask yourself is, do you think your cat gets on with other cats? Have you seen your cat be friendly to other adult cats since they've lived with you? And maybe you might also have seen them be not friendly to other adult cats. For example, how does your cat behave if another cat goes by the window outside? Because it's very common that people think, oh, my cat must be lonely, or your cat must be lonely and they must need a feline friend. But cats actually are quite happy, many of them, as the only cat in the home. They often don't really want to share. They don't want to share their guardians. They don't want to share all of their resources. And so it can be quite difficult to decide whether or not to get another cat. And in most cases, if your cat seems to be happy, I would say don't get another cat. I would say probably it's best for your cat to be the only cat. The difference would be if you have seen them be friendly with other cats. Like sometimes when a cat has access outdoors, they actually do become friends with a neighboring cat, for example. And then you would know that they quite likely would get on with another cat. And then the question is, if you do get another cat, it's about setting things up so that it becomes a very, very slow introduction. And when we introduce one cat to another cat, we do it really slowly. And ideally, we try and make it so that they get to know the smell of the other cat first, before they ever see the other cat and before they even spend time together, so that by the time they finally get to spend time together, it feels like they know each other already. So the other thing is, would you have the time to do that kind of slow introduction, and could you set your home up so that you'd keep the cats in separate spaces to begin with? But in general, actually, if your cat is happy, don't get another cat. I think assume that they're probably quite happy being the only cat. They're not necessarily going to want to share you with someone else. And if you think, it really depends on the early socialization that they've had. But when we look at cats who live like as feral cats, many of them are social, but some of them are not, and some of them live independently. So the cat as a species has this really wide range of social behavior. And if you look at feral cats that live in colonies, mother cats often will help each other. They will help to nurse each other's kittens, for example. There will usually be some male cats that are part of the colony, and a neutered male cat actually often will get on with other cats quite well. But there are also lots of cats that do not want to live with other cats, and it's really hard to know what kind of cat you've got. So I think it's a very common thing that people think, oh, my cat must need another cat, but very often they don't. Very often they would prefer to have all of your attention. And then I can see Kerry said something about it being hard if we see a person whose cat is not doing well get another cat, thinking that will make the cat who isn't happy feel better. Yeah, I think so. And so often when someone has an older cat, they think if they should get a kitten to give the older cat something to do. But if you think if you were a senior and suddenly someone brought a teenager to live with you who was going to play lots of loud music and have lots of parties and things, it's not necessarily going to be the kind of thing that you would want. So very often, actually, it is better for the cat to be an only cat. I mean, we're lucky, those of us who have cats that get on with each other, but in a lot of multi-cat homes, actually, there's a lot of stress and tension. So, yeah, and your vet thought so too. So, I mean, probably your cat is quite happy as they are. And, if you want to do something else for them, then spend that time thinking about, more time with the toys, more time playing with the one toy, for example, giving them those opportunities to play. and that can help them, and just setting your house up as much as you can. So lavish all of your attention on the one cat that you've got, and they'll be very happy, I'm sure. Or I'm sure they already are. And thank you. It's a really good question.
So I'm not seeing any more questions right now, but please, everyone, feel free. We have a little bit of time left. If there's one or two more questions, don't be shy. I'm going to chime in now with a question about Zora, our bookshop cat. And I'm sort of dreading the answer. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but we have Zora. I believe she was feral, or I believe, she was a stray. And so the bookshop owners took her in. And now she's been living in the bookstore, I want to say, for about 2 years, and she stays in the bookstore. And I've often wondered, is she lonely at night when there's nobody around?
Yeah. So the nice thing about cats is that actually they're okay being home alone for longer periods than for a dog. So with a dog, we would say don't leave your dog alone. Ideally, don't leave your dog alone for more than about 4 hours. But with a cat, they're quite happy if someone goes out to work all day. So my guess is that she's actually probably okay with it, because you're there all the daytime during working hours and the opening hours of the shop. And so the nighttime when you're not there is kind of equivalent to all of the staff going out to work in a way. It's probably that same kind of length of time. So they're probably okay. I think she's probably quite happy with it. And she has lots of tall spaces to go because, she has all the bookshelves to climb up on. Yeah, and I'm sure she has lots to do, and she gets to meet lots of people in the daytime if she wants to meet them. And if she doesn't, she's obviously got good spaces to hide with all those bookshelves. So I think she's probably very happy. I think a bookstore is a lovely space for a cat to live.
I'm glad to hear that. That puts a lot of my mind at ease. I wonder if you might debunk or just give us more insight onto some sort of typical things one hears about cats. One of the ones is that the whiskers are the size of their body. So like the whiskers are used to measure what they can fit into. Is that true?
Yeah, the whiskers have lots of nerves in the end of them, so they do get a lot of feedback from the whiskers, and they will help them to feel what they can fit through. Cats can fit through really tiny spaces because they don't have a collarbone like we do, so they can really squeeze in very narrow and get through really tiny spaces. And the other thing about the whiskers is if they're catching prey, like if they catch a mouse, because cats can't see things that are really close up to them, then their whiskers really come into play, helping them to feel the mouse, like when it's right in front of their face, and they'll actually wrap their whiskers around as they're catching the mouse. So they really actually use their whiskers, and they matter a lot to the cat. Yeah, that's a great question.
That's so interesting. Another one is, and I think from the portion that you read, I think I know what the answer might be, but the blinking means that they love you, they trust you. Is that true?
Yes, that's right. So the slow blink it's a nice communication system thing that cats do to each other, to other cats that they like, and then they do it to us too, because they like us. So if your cat's eyes are wide open and they're staring, that's not a good thing. But if the eyes are kind of closed, then they're more comfortable. And if you do a kind of slow blink, they actually really like it when you do a slow blink to them. And scientists have done some research and tested what happens when you go up to a cat that you don't know and you do a slow blink. And very often the cat will do a slow blink back. So it's a really lovely symbol that they like you, they love you, they are enjoying your presence, basically.
That's so wonderful to hear. Oh yes, Marilyn did ask this question before, and I think it got lost in the shuffle. Can you explain the tail up signal?
Yeah, so a tail up signal is when you see your cat walking towards you, or if you've got multiple cats in the home and they get along, it might be when they're walking towards each other and you see the tail straight up, and there's usually a little hook in the end, it looks a bit like a question mark, and that's called the tail up signal, and it's a friendly signal from the cat. And scientists actually did some research where they made silhouettes and stuck them to the wall to see how cats would respond when there was a tail up signal there. And they could only do it once, because pretty quickly the cat learned that this wasn't actually another cat, it was just a silhouette. But when they first interacted and they saw that tail up signal, they were more friendly. So it's a sign of friendliness. It's a really nice sign of just affectionate, friendly behavior. And it shows that they're part of the same social group and they like each other.
Wonderful. I guess I will ask one or a few final questions. Yeah. Kim has a question. Is there a good cat tree to buy for older cats?
Yeah, so older cats often would prefer something that's carpeted rather than made of wood, because it's just that little bit easier on their paws. And some cats, if they get older, they might get arthritis, which gives them a bit of pain. So some cats actually will not jump up quite so high, and they might prefer something that's next to a piece of furniture that makes it a shorter step or jump onto it, rather than having to climb up it. Just to make it a bit easier on their back legs. So if they're an older cat, think about the positioning of it, or can you put it near something that will act a bit like a ramp or a set of steps to get up for them, because they may not find it so comfortable to climb up as high as they used to when they were younger. Yeah, and it's really important to think about these things for a senior cat.
I'm so glad that we're getting so much good information about taking care of our cats. We're running sort of to the end of our hour, so I have a two-part question, which I hope will be a good closer. The first one is, what's the most surprising or, most unexpected thing that you learned while you were writing this book? And then the second part is, what's the most important thing you want, cat lovers, cat owners everywhere to take away from the book, from what you've learned?
Great questions. So I actually have a favorite thing that I learned, and it is that about the slow blink. And it wasn't completely a surprise, because I used to volunteer for many, many years in my local shelter, and I was just used to going into rooms and doing a slow blink at the cats to see what would happen, and they usually would slow blink back. And these were cats that I had not met before, that were in a very stressful environment because they were new to the shelter and they weren't used to it. So I was really pleased to see that research, because I think it's something that cat people have been doing instinctively to our cats, and it's just lovely to see that it's actually been tested by scientists. So I think that's really nice, and it's really important that things actually do get tested, because we can easily assume things when we don't really know. So I think that's a really nice thing. And I've forgotten the second part of the question. I'm sorry.
Not at all. Not at all. It was, what's the most important thing, or maybe
Yes.
one of the most important things to take away?
The most important thing, I think the most important things are to give your cats choices and to give them control over things as much as you possibly can, and to give them those safe spaces so they have a choice of whether or not to interact with you. They have a choice of whether or not to interact with toys that you give them. And if they have had enough and they're finding things stressful, they've got somewhere safe that they can go and they can hide, where maybe they'll be high up or maybe they'll be hidden, but they know that you're not going to disturb them. You're not going to pull them out and force them to do anything. So choices for your cat, keeping them safe and giving them choice and control.
Sounds like good advice for cats and good advice for people. It applies to treating all beings, should probably have choices,
Yes.
control, and safe spaces. Well, we're at the end of our hour. Zazie, thank you. That was so wonderful. Everyone who was here, thank you. Thank you so much. It was so lovely to see all of you on screen. As we're wrapping up, I just want to remind everybody that if you have friends or other people who are cat lovers and weren't able to make this will be recorded and it will live here at this crowdcast.io/e/Zazie Todd Hub City. So you can send the recording to people who might want this information. It will also be on our YouTube page. And I just want to thank Zazie again and thank all of you. It was so wonderful to share this evening with you. And I hope everyone has a lovely evening, or wherever you probably different time zone than I'm in, but I hope everyone has a lovely rest of their time, and come back and join us next time at future Hub City events.
Thank you to everyone who came, and thank you very much for hosting me and all the wonderful questions. It's been so lovely to come and chat with you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.